bleeding purple and gold. From the heart of Los Angeles, this is the LakersNation.com podcast with your host, Trevor Lane.
Welcome to today's show. As always, we're powered by CLNS Media and sponsored by Harry's Razors. You can find a fantastic set of razors at harrys.com/Lakers. And of course, we always ask that you go find this show on iTunes and rate, review, and subscribe. Now, the NBA offseason is in full swing. Free agency has begun. The Lakers have not done a whole lot yet, but they've been involved in a heck of a lot of rumors. So I've brought in Jabari Davis to help us break it all down. Jabari, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Trevor. I appreciate it.
So how are you enjoying free agency so far?
Well, I mean, for the Lakers, it's pretty much non-existent. But I'm one of those guys. I thoroughly enjoy NBA. Like whether it's NBA game, NBA action, news, whatever. So I appreciate this process. Just as much as or probably more than most.
Yeah, it's amazing the way the NBA has become really just about a year-round league. I mean, we get the dead period a little bit in August and September, but then once training camp kicks in again, it's like, here we go. So it's incredible the way the NBA maintains interest for so long.
Yeah, and in those years where they have the what is it, Team USA? I don't want to call them by the wrong thing. That even goes into August and sometimes depending upon what which year, early September. So yeah, you're right. The NBA has done a really good job of making itself, as you said, almost a year-round story, and I'm absolutely here for it.
So before we dive into all the Lakers news, which, I mean, I guess has been a little bit uneventful as far as free agency goes, but we knew that was going to be the case. But before we get into that, the big news recently was Gordon Hayward going to Boston. And I've got some thoughts on this, but I'm curious about what your take was on Hayward choosing Boston and kind of the whole process.
I was a little bit surprised only because once all the stories were coming out about, Miami, I looked at that as a situation where, hey, you know what, if I'm Gordon Hayward and I'm leaving, Utah, unless I'm going to Boston, it's probably going to be to Miami because, well, let's be honest, who doesn't want to live near South Beach as well as and play, live and play near South Beach. But in terms of Boston, I love it. Look. We don't have to mince words. The Western Conference is going to be vastly superior to the Eastern Conference. This is nothing new, but obviously it's getting even worse with all of the migration, just so far this summer.
Right.
So I was in favor of it in the sense that at least we can look at Boston as potentially a true rival for Cleveland. So it's not literally a cakewalk all the way through the finals.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I mean, essentially the top four teams in the East, if we're assuming that it's Washington and the Celtics, and then you've got Toronto and of course the Cavs, and I'm assuming that Milwaukee will be kind of knocking on the doorstep there, but most of those teams are going to have almost like I hate to say it, but practically a bye through the first round of the playoffs. I mean, whoever matches up with Milwaukee may have a tough time, but other than that, there's just not much left in the East. And so if you're Gordon Hayward and you're looking at it, you're going, man, I've got a dogfight in the West just in the first round. And if you do emerge beaten and bloodied into the Western Conference Finals, you're going to get pulverized by the Golden State Warriors. That's not such a good scenario. So I can understand why he picked Boston. I think the bone to pick that I have is the way it all went down. And I know that Hayward wasn't trying to do this, but we saw that word broke about 6 hours or 5 hours before his official statement, right? That came out on the Players Tribune. And man, I just had to think in that moment for Utah fans, how brutal was that?
Yeah, and not only that, in this day and age, I understand a player or the representatives wanting to put the message out, on their terms and on their timetable. But in this day and age, that just doesn't happen. For one, they tried to deny that the decision had been made. Come on, right. I think we know the decision had been made. It just got out a lot earlier than they anticipated. But yeah, no, you hit it on the head. For Jazz fans, that had to be brutal. Is he gone? Oh wait, no. First he's gone. Then wait, maybe he's not. Even though everybody outside of there is like, no, he's probably still gone. And then only, like you said, 5 or 6 hours or however long it was, later on, to kind of get to get stabbed again, that's got to be brutal. But
what was really happening there? Like, was was Gordon Hayward, and when word first broke, was Gordon Hayward just sitting down to write his Players Tribune piece, and then he's just like feverishly typing, and then 5 hours later they finally release it? I mean, I think at that point, once it was out, they would have been better off just saying, yeah, this is what's happening, right? And just confirming it, because what ended up happening was you gave Utah fans you crushed them, and then you gave them that little sliver of hope just to crush them again a few hours later. And I don't think getting that personal message from Hayward saying, hey, it was a really tough decision, really does anything to soften the blow at that point anyway.
Yeah, I'd venture to say, I'm sure it was a tough decision, especially since he played, the first 7 years of his career there, or however long it was. But I'm pretty sure that decision was pretty tough on those fans as well. So no, I don't want to. I'm not one that usually takes it out on players, because look, I'm actually one that says, hey, look, go, do what you want to do, especially if you give an organization 5 or 6 or 7 or however, if you give an organization a certain amount of time, I have no problem, with you moving on. But like you, I just, it doesn't look good. The optics of it don't look good when you are, when you're hemming and hawing over it, and it's obvious that the decision's already been made.
Yeah, exactly. And, I don't want to bash Hayward too much or anything like that, because realistically, it's probably not on him. He probably wasn't the one to leak the information that got out early. No. I mean, that's not really his fault, but it's all going to kind of come back to his doorstep because of just the situation that he's in. Basketball wise, though, I mean, Boston now is a pretty strong team. I don't know that I would say that they are better than Cleveland at this point. I don't know that I'd say they're at the same level. I think they're better. They're at more of a point where they can maybe contend with the Cavaliers, but I don't know if I'd say that they're up there even with them just yet. Where are you at on that?
I certainly wouldn't say that either. I'm always one that will go with, let's see how the pieces fit together before we just go ahead and crown somebody. It's the same reason why on the out here in the West, Do I think that Chris Paul and James Harden can be excellent together? Yes, I do. But at the same time, I'd like to see what that looks like, because it's not just as simple as, just putting pieces together on, like on a spreadsheet. These are actual individuals.
Right.
So for Boston, no, I agree. I wouldn't automatically put them up there. But what my original point was to put, what I was trying to say was, it at least makes it a conversation, because last year it wasn't even a conversation.
Right.
So.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. And yeah, that's a great point, that you really have to see how it all plays out, because as Lakers fans know all too well, sometimes super teams don't work. I mean, chemistry is a big thing. And, sometimes you get a center that likes to pout a little bit, and a point guard that ages rapidly, and next thing you know, the wheels fall off.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I know. That was...
this should be fun.
This should be fun. It was anything but.
Nope.
So, hey, let's talk about Nick Young here. Before we move into the Lakers themselves. Nick Young, Los Angeles Lakers free agent, and he signed today, or agreed to sign today, with the Golden State Warriors for actually about $500,000 less than he was making on his Lakers player option. So he actually gave up a little bit of money. I was a little surprised with that. I thought that he would have signed a long-term deal, but still, Nick Young with the Golden State Warriors. Any issues with that, or are you pretty excited about it?
No, I'm happy for Nick. I mean, look, with the way things went here in Los Angeles, about as up and down as you can possibly imagine. You're for a guy, especially a hometown guy, and obviously that some of that was dependent upon the system that he was in, the coach that he was playing for, and sometimes it was some circumstances that they came to be. But he always had that smile. Really, no pun intended. Really, he really rebounded last year. And shot the lights out. If I'm not mistaken, was one of the league leaders in 3-point percentage, and if not the league leader in free throw percentage, was one of them. I know he was up there.
Right.
So I'm happy for him. Now, I'm always surprised when people take haircuts to their money, but I'm certainly not going to criticize him for the opportunity to play on a juggernaut like Golden State.
Right. I was thinking about this just a bit ago. 1 year ago at this time, if you asked me where will Nick Young be at this summer right now, I would have said he would be playing not in the NBA. He'd be over in another league, an overseas league, because it looked like he was going to get cut by the Lakers, and it didn't seem like any other team was going to pick him up. And yet here he is. I mean, he completely resurrected his career in Los Angeles last season, turned everything around, and now Nick Young is is the prohibitive favorite to win a title. I mean, the Golden State Warriors are going to be the favorite to win the NBA championship next year. And I just think what an amazing turnaround. I'm not mad that he left Los Angeles at all. I don't have those kind of feelings or anything. I'm more just in awe of what a 180-degree turn his career took this season, and just so impressed with him for sticking with it and really fighting through some tough times and everything. So yeah, like you said, more power to him. Happy for Nick Young. And I mean, hey, if they end up winning a championship this year and he hits like some clutch shots in the finals or something like that, he'll get his money the following season, even though he took a little bit of a pay cut this year, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He realistically probably only has one more deal, left in him. Although I don't want to put, an expiration date on him. We still see, guys like Vince Carter and Jamal Crawford still doing it at 38, 40 years old. But you can probably only bank on having one more. So I would imagine you're going to get the very best that you can possibly get out of Nick Young, which we saw flashes of and different periods of here in Los Angeles, in order to not only shine, in order to garner a future deal, but also because, hey, it looks like a heck of a lot of fun playing up there in Golden State. So hey, look, I'm happy for him.
Yeah. I think you gotta be happy for Nick Young at this point, and I would hope that when he comes back to Staples Center and he's wearing a Warriors uniform, that he gets a nice round of applause, because it really is just amazing the way he's turned his career around. Now, you know what? I'm seeing this, Jabari. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing, but I'm seeing this on Twitter a ton, and it's driving me a little bit nuts here. I'm seeing this comment. It's always something along the lines of, "Oh, there goes another free agent as somebody signs," right? George Hill signs with Sacramento, or Dion Waiters signs with Miami. It's what are the Lakers doing? Come on, Magic, do something. And I'm amazed at how many people still just don't quite get what the Lakers are up to here and what their plan is, even though they've told everybody exactly what they're doing. Are you seeing that same thing that I am, or is it just in my mentions?
No, it's 100% all over. And I was just going to say, they came out and said, right before free agency even started, if I'm not mistaken, it was Magic that said, we're probably going to we're going to look to spend the bulk of our money in the following summer, not this summer. So I really don't understand why people get so surprised. And there are two parts to that. One, if you've been following this team long enough, you should understand by now that the Lakers as a brand, even though they just came off of the worst 4 or 5 year stretch in the franchise's history, it reigns supreme to the point where opposing agents and representatives will always use the Lakers as a bargaining piece, to either drive the point home or scare another team into giving them what they want. So when you hear all of these names being thrown out, I'm not saying don't get your hopes up, but really don't get your hopes up. For one, because they already said they weren't going to spend this summer, and two, it very likely it's representatives of these players or even other GMs throwing the Lakers out there in order to throw shade at them, or in the event of other GMs and other organizations, or in order to benefit their claim if you're with the player representatives.
Oh, yeah. If you attach Lakers to anything, it's immediately going to blow up in the media and people are going to take notice of it and everything. So it's a great way to get noticed. And if the Lakers are out there as the boogeyman, as a real option, then other teams are going to kind of scramble and maybe up their offers and everything, add more years. I've been saying all along that the Lakers have handcuffed themselves in this free agency to 1-year deals, which we knew. And that basically if there is a competition between them and any other team, regardless of who it is, all that other team has to do is say, okay, we'll give you 2 years or we'll give you 3 years, and then the Lakers are out. I mean, for the most
Sacramento.
part. Yeah, exactly. And if I'm George Hill, I'm doing the exact same thing. George Hill is 31 years old. He's going to want to get as many years as he possibly can. So when Sacramento says, hey, 3 years, and the Lakers say 1 year, he's going to go to Sacramento. Right? But that's just kind of the way it is. And the same thing with Dion Waiters. He got 4 years out of Miami. He was rumored to be interested in the Lakers offer. The Lakers actually offered him more. They offered him $17 million. We heard from Basketball Insiders. They offered him. He was offered $17 million for 1 year. And so that was more in one season than he was going to get from Miami. But Miami offered that long-term incentive, right? They gave 4 years, which gives him plenty of reason to stick around there with the Heat. So, I'm amazed at the surprise that we're seeing among the Lakers fan base. They see this as a failure, and I don't think it is, because we're not really comparing apples to apples here.
Yeah, and not only that, I think it's a bit disingenuous to be honest with you. I'm not talking about necessarily from the fans, but like say the bloggers and even the main guys, the ESPN guys, the Fox, the Fox One guys. When they write these stories saying like, hey, the Lakers could get, look, I'll actually just say, I'll call a spade a spade. Stephen A. Smith did this last year where he said, oh, the Lakers might get, or a couple years ago, the Lakers could get Carmelo and they could get such and such. And he was pumping that story over and over and over again, getting everybody's hopes worked up, getting everybody riled up. And then when they didn't get them, because it was obvious that they would, that neither of the guys that they mentioned would come to a rebuilding team, a rebuilding and struggling lottery team. Then it was like instant. It was instant content again. Well, the Lakers, the continuing the failing brand. Listen. I don't mean to knock anybody that still has to work in a click-driven society. I absolutely don't, because I did it for years. Now I'm just a guy that talks on the radio, so that's why I don't have to worry about that quite as much. But I will say it doesn't help the fan base to drink all that Kool-Aid all the time. Sometimes take a look at it and really think, well, would it make sense for LaMarcus Aldridge 2 years ago to have come to this team? No, it wouldn't. So let's not get all worked up when players make decisions that all of us would have made.
Exactly, and you're right on the money there. You know what? If it comes next summer and then the Lakers are missing on all their targets, then maybe you can spin that narrative. But right now, and now is not the time to say, oh, the Lakers are missing on targets again, or Magic is whiffing on getting free agents. No, he's not. He's trying. He's sending out 1-year deals because he knows that's all he can do. And again, if you're any free agent, I mean, you're going to take a multi-year deal over a 1-year deal. That's the reality of it. The Lakers want their cap space clear for 2018, so they're going to settle for whoever will take a 1-year deal, and we'll see who that will be. One of the names that I'm getting a ton of comments on whenever he comes up is Rajon Rondo. He keeps popping up, and it seems like for the last few years he's been kind of just dancing around the Lakers. The Lakers have been dancing around him, and I don't know if it finally gets done or not. But what's your take? Is this okay to go out and sign a guy like Rondo, or should the Lakers just stay away?
Okay, so here's the thing. Rondo can still play. He showed that last year. He's shown it throughout his career. But in particular, last year, the second half of the year, and into the playoffs, prior to him being injured, he showed that he can still get it done. And as crazy as it sounds, can still provide leadership, and a veteran presence in the right setting. But if you're the Los Angeles Lakers, and I asked this, well, actually, no, you may answer it. But if you're the Los Angeles Lakers, and you have, and it's obvious culture is a big thing. They made that very evident, with the move, even though it was an excellent move in terms of the salary that they got rid of. That also, was tied into, and I'm referencing D'Angelo, being, moved on. Right. That also tied into the very obvious, transition and desire to develop a certain culture. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that you'll have issues with Rondo. Of course not, because, like I said, he's shown at least recently that he can fit in. But I will say the risk, I don't know if the potential reward is worth that risk. Does that make sense? Absolutely.
And I agree. The Lakers have been doing their due diligence from what we've heard. They've been calling around. They've been asking teams that have dealt with Rondo before, what was he like, and can he really be a leader, and all that kind of stuff. And that makes a lot of sense. They should definitely be doing that. But historically, Rondo has had some issues. I mean, look at what happened in Dallas. He lost his playoff share. The team actually voted against him getting his playoff share because he kind of quit on them in the playoffs. I mean, that seems insane to quit on, especially a coach like Rick Carlisle's just amazing. And yet we also hear these positive stories about Rondo too. We hear about him being a good mentor last year in Chicago. And that's the kind of guy that you really want around these young players. So it's this weird situation that they're in. And yeah, you're right. If you shipped out D'Angelo Russell, which a lot of people weren't too happy with, but if you ship out D'Angelo Russell, partially because of character issues, and then you bring in his replacement, his Rajon Rondo, I don't think that's a great look. So chemistry-wise, and all that, I do have concerns there. I also have some big concerns on the basketball court as far as how he would fit. Do you have issues with that as well?
Well, yeah. Even though he's improved as a 3-point shooter over the last 3-4 seasons or whatnot, I for whatever reason, maybe maybe it's because I watched the first 6 years of his career. It's just difficult for me to believe. No, look, it could work. They could find a way to balance things and allow, and because Lonzo is, the one thing one of the things I really liked about him in college was he also showed that he could be an off the ball player. Like, yes, he controlled the flow of that game and definitely controlled, he was definitely the motor, the total motor of that UCLA offense. But he was also able to, move off, work off ball, work off screens. And I would be intrigued to see that. That said, again, with Rondo, what happens if he gets to the point where whether it's the competitive juices or whatever the case may be, and he decides that he wants to really compete with this guy? Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing to, for Lonzo or for any guard to be pushed. That, it's certainly not a bad thing. It would just worry me. It would worry me for, the attitude reasons, as well as, what happens if it actually becomes a competition and it starts to, negatively impact Lonzo, and as well as the other players in an on-court way.
Right, and then you've got a problem on your hands because Magic Johnson has already said at the press conference, maybe he went a little too far here, but I mean, he said that Lonzo is the new face of the Lakers, right? He's the guy who's supposed to be hanging up his jersey when his career is over. He's supposed to be breaking Magic Johnson's own records because we can't put our expectations high enough, apparently. But, I mean, I just don't know what's going to happen if they end up butting heads or something like that. And so you're right. There's definitely some concerns there. Now, given who's left and who's available in free agency, and knowing that the Lakers have about $17.3 million available, aside from Rondo, are there other guys that you would go after, or are the Lakers kind of out of luck at this point?
No, there are some guys that there's some guys that are available now, and there's guys that could be available. And I just also want to say quickly for the record, I could be totally wrong about Rondo. They could bring him in and he could be a model citizen. And you know what? More power to him if they've done their due diligence and that ends up being the case. But if not, there are some other guys. I know you've heard the name. I like CJ Miles. He shot 41% from deep, last year. He's 6'6", got a big body. He can kind of play, 2 or 3 different positions. And obviously Luke and, in this organization, they're trying to bring in more interchangeable parts. They certainly addressed that in the draft. And moving forward, it would seem as though they want that type of prototypical swingman that can play different roles and obviously switch on defense and fill in the different positions on offense. So he would be intriguing to me. Jamal Crawford, if he happens to get bought out, if I'm not mistaken, I think that they said there's a chance that Atlanta would buy him out. Obviously, the very first thing that you heard was he would have interest in playing with the Lakers. This one I could actually believe, and I think would be an excellent addition if they were able to bring him. Not only because he's a guy that can get hot and really score, it kind of similar to the way that Lou Williams did last year and over the last couple of years. But he's also a great guy around the locker room. I've actually had the opportunity to interact with him, and I can tell you, that's the type of guy that they need to start bringing in. So, like, if he were available, I would definitely say either a Jamal Crawford or a CJ Miles. And honestly, if we're being straightforward, Rondo will probably be 3rd or 4th on my list, but he is on the list.
Yeah, and I think you made a great point there that we don't really know what he would be. I mean, there was a point in time when Meta World Peace, back when he was Ron Artest, when he was just seen as a bad egg, and everybody thought he was this locker room cancer, and he was going to be a complete nut if you add him to your team. And then, I mean, here he is. He's been the guy that's been helping the young Lakers develop. So I think that's a fantastic point by you there. And then Rondo and CJ Miles, I mean, CJ Miles was next on my list of guys to look at. I think he's a great fit as well. So there are some other targets out there. Yeah, I would push Rondo down a little bit. I'd even consider just bringing back Tyler Ennis if he's available, if the Lakers can get him. He'd be an interesting fit there too. I still think you kind of need that veteran presence. This is a super young team. I mean, they brought in Brook Lopez, but they're also losing MWP. They're losing Nick Young. They're losing some of these other vets that they had around, Mozgov. So I feel like they could use a few more veterans. So CJ Miles, I think, would be a phenomenal fit. I would love it if they got him. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of slim pickings at this point. It's not like they're going to go land like some superstar player that's going to turn their season around or anything. Right now, you're more looking for pieces that are just going to fit in and continue to push the young kids in the right direction. And that's the best you can hope for at this point. And then next summer is when we can hope that the Lakers bring fireworks on 4th of July for us, right?
Absolutely. You know, one little tidbit on Tyler Ennis, because I actually had him as well. I was looking at him earlier. I was kind of looking at, the knock on him was that he couldn't shoot. He shot 39% from deep, for the Lakers. Now, I know a lot of it was garbage time. It was down the stretch of last year. And, you can always say, well, nobody was really paying it. Hey, look, the guy shot 39% on the court. So I'm not saying that I would necessarily expect that, necessarily expect that, but if he could continue to improve upon that shot and continue to to kind of get on-court awareness at times, and I know that's difficult to hear when you're talking about a point guard, but yes, that with any young player, that's something that's usually something that can improve. I look at it like, if he's not with the Lakers, I do think that he could probably latch on somewhere. So I would expect them to at least invite him to camp, if he's not already signed by somebody.
Right, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, he's proven enough, and as ironic as it is, he inadvertently saved the Lakers draft pick last year. Because if it wasn't for him getting hot and he almost single-handedly beat the San Antonio Spurs, which no one saw coming. And if that doesn't happen, the Lakers finish with the second worst record in the league, which the Phoenix Suns in reality finished with, and they dropped to 4th. If the Lakers had dropped to 4th, they would have lost their pick. So maybe just for Tyler Ennis helping out in that endeavor, you bring him back. Hey, we have actual Lakers basketball coming up here. On Friday, the Las Vegas Summer League starts, and it's not always pretty, but it's going to be Lakers basketball being played. Are you as excited about this as I am? Because I'm fired up.
Well, yeah, and even though this has been thrown around as a joke on Twitter, we have to be excited. Darn near half the team, the entire starting lineup is going to be playing. So I'm very excited to see second year Ingram. Very excited. Obviously, Lonzo's first game. You want to see what he looks like out there, and with some live competition. All the talk is on the side now. It's game time now. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Of course, I want to see what Thomas Bryant, Kyle Kuzma, Josh Hart, what those guys look like. But I'm also interested in seeing what second year Zubac looks like. And actually, I haven't looked. Is Zubac set to play?
Yes. Yeah, he is. He's planning on playing. He is practicing with them, and he actually had a little bit of I hope this was a little bit of a joke today. He was after practice. The reporters were asking him if he was looking forward to catching lobs from Lonzo Ball, and he said, "Yeah, sure, we can try it, but I've only got about a 10-inch vertical right now. I'm trying to get up to 1 foot." Yeah.
Well, look, when you're 7'1", you can get away with having a phone book vert.
Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah, but he is definitely playing. He is playing, even if he won't be jumping out of the gym or anything like that. But he is playing. I'm definitely excited to see him play because he's an awesome guy. So looking at who the Lakers are bringing, what would your starting five be?
For Summer League?
Yeah, for Summer League.
As long as, to be honest with you, as long as Ingram and Lonzo start, I'd be fine, with whatever variation they have, or variance they have. I'd like to see as much Zubac as possible. And as long as those other three guys, or those other, 3 or 4 young guys, can get some time, it doesn't matter. Honestly, it doesn't matter much to me. But you gotta have Lonzo in there, right from the start. If Magic's going to say he's the face of the franchise, and as you referenced earlier, and already predicting records and jerseys and everything, let's see what you got. So as long as Lonzo and Ingram are in there, I'm fine with whichever direction they go.
And from watching the Utah Summer League so far, we've seen Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have looked awfully good for the Boston Celtics. They've looked incredible. And I almost feel like maybe this is going to put a little bit of pressure on the Lakers, because now you've got the last two number 3 picks in the draft have looked phenomenal. Jason Tatum is scoring over 20 points a game, and Jaylen Brown looks like he's too good to be playing in Summer League. So now it's going to be Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram, the last two number 2 picks, to kind of step it up. I really hope we see some big things out of Brandon Ingram. I hope that he shows that he is also too good now to be playing in Summer League, and I hope we see some real signs from Lonzo Ball, because Markelle Fultz has looked pretty darn good playing for the Philadelphia 76ers. Overall, Donovan Mitchell has looked phenomenal for the Utah Jazz. This rookie class has hit Summer League and just really, really shown off. They've been really impressive, especially compared to last year's group. So I'm hoping that Ball and Ingram are able to really step it up, and it's going to be exciting to see. I know the Thomas and Mack Center is certainly going to be rocking. I know you're going to be there for the first game against the Clippers, right? Anything in particular you're going to be looking for while you're there?
Like I said, Ingram, I need to see what steps if he's able to take the next step both on offense and defense, and what it looks like physically. He's always going to be a thin guy, but you know what I mean in terms of like being able to absorb the contact. He started actually showing a lot of signs of that down the stretch of last season. So definitely looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing what Lonzo looks like under the bright lights. It's one thing to do it at Pauley Pavilion. It's one thing to do it in college. It's a whole other thing. And of course, it's just Summer League. And I feel like obligated to say that, because if the guy comes out and scores 50, it's just Summer League. If the guy comes out and looks terrible, it's still just Summer League. We had all those people last couple years. If D'Lo didn't look good, it was, oh my goodness, he's a bust. If Randall looked sloppy, it's like, oh my goodness. It's like, yeah, guys, remember, these are 19, 20, 21-year-olds. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. But like you, I am hoping that we do that they're able to show us something, because hey, look, as much as we want to talk about, they're on their own pace and they're on their own path, it does mean something that Boston is over there just coming off of Eastern Conference Finals, adding another great talent, and then going out and signing, regardless of how you feel, I'm speaking generally, of Garrett and Gordon Hayward, adding one of the better guys at his position, or certainly that was available.
Exactly. Yeah. If they're adding players like that and everything, and the Lakers Celtics rivalry is always going to be a big thing. So you got to hope that the young Lakers are able to really show out, and they're able to step up. I mean, guys like David Nwaba have some experience, and here's one that I'm interested in, because I think this is kind of an under the radar addition to the Lakers Summer League team, and that's Vander Blue. This guy's the D-League MVP, G-League now, I guess we should call it. But last season he was the D-League MVP. He's played Summer League before. This guy's got experience, and I think he could be a difference maker for him in this Summer League. When you've got so many guys that are tense, they're fighting for their lives in the NBA, and you've got a guy like Vander Blue with that kind of experience where he's done this before. He's done this a few times, and he really had a strong season in the D-League. I think that he could turn some heads here. As much as we focus on Ball and Ingram and all these other guys, I'm kind of interested to see what Vander Blue brings.
No, you're exactly right. And Vander, like you mentioned, he's got experience. He's played in the Summer League before. He balled out in the D/G League last year, and he's a guy that's he's definitely going to come in hungry. He's still waiting on that opportunity. Still waiting, to stay up with the at the top level. At the very least, I think I don't have to worry. We don't have to worry about what you're going to see out of him. He's going to get buckets. It's really, and you know what? Hey, maybe Lonzo gets gets the majority of his assists to Vander and Brandon Ingram. I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be a lot of fun. And looking at these. Looking at the lineup that the Lakers have, I mean, I see some athletes out there that could really run with Lonzo. I think we could see some exciting play there. You've got Kyle Kuzma is pretty good at running the floor. Of course, Brandon Ingram we know can do it, and then David Nwaba is a really good athlete. And then even if it's Josh Hart out there, I mean, that's some floor spacing that you've got. Plus, Thomas Bryant was pretty darn good at running the floor for a big man with Indiana. I think we could see some pretty exciting play in the Summer League. It's going to be sloppy, of course, because it's Summer League, and that's just kind of what happens when you try to throw a bunch of guys together, let them practice for like 3 days, and then say, okay, go play a bunch of games. But still, I think this could be an exciting thing to watch for Lakers fans, especially getting their first glimpse of the guy who's supposed to be the next franchise player, right, in Lonzo Ball.
Yeah, basically what I've taken from this new regime is it's time to stop talking about it, and it's time to show. It's time to do it. So, like we've been saying, throughout this podcast, it's time for these guys to show us what they got. If you're, I know Randall's not playing in summer league, but like I've been considered, like as I've been referencing this is his show or go year. He's eligible. He's eligible for the big raise next summer. This is his show or go year. So I'm really excited. From summer league through training camp all the way into the regular season. I can't wait with this team. And you know what? And that's not just saying it for the benefit of the podcast. It's been a while since I felt that way. It's been a while. Like there's always been either a dark cloud, and by always I mean over the last 4 or 5 years, there's been either a dark cloud, severe injuries, or just the feeling of they just have no shot going into the year. This is one of the first years, and I'm not one of those silly individuals that will say like, oh, they're going to be in the playoffs. No. Let's end that here. But it's the first year in a while where I say we really have a lot to look forward to, and it looks at least as though they're headed in the right direction.
I feel like we had a little bit of that sentiment last year with Luke coming in and the team starting off so well in the NBA season. I think that kind of raised the morale of the fan base. But aside from Randall, what else is it that really has you so optimistic about this bunch at this point?
Quite frankly, because I think Ingram's going to be special. This is the hill. I don't do this often, Trevor. We've been following each other on Twitter quite often, or for quite some time now. But I will say, I'll die on this hill. I think Brandon Ingram's going to be in the next 4 years is going to be one of the better players better swingmen in the league. That's why, because I think that guy. I think the Lakers hit it right on the head when they said he's going to be the only untouchable part. Now, that's not a disrespect to anybody else. I love the rest of these guys. I love Larry Nance, across the board. I thoroughly enjoy covering them as well as watching them develop. But I think Ingram's going to be that special guy. The jury's out on Randall. I like him. He's already improved a significant amount. And even from the end of the season, the transition or the continued transformation that he's done with his body has been extremely impressive. Now let me see what you got. Let me see that right hand. Let me see you be able to drop over your left shoulder. Let me see you be able to do even a little right-handed floater. Let me see you be more focused on the defensive end. Because Randall has shown that he can actually make some really good defensive plays, but you need to see him take that next step and actually be a willing defender throughout the game, not just in a big moment or spot coverage.
Right. Yeah, he needs consistency. That's for sure. He definitely does. And I'm with you. I think it's going to be a big year for Julius Randle. I'm excited with what we might see from him. I agree with you about Brandon Ingram. I think he could be a very, very good player, even though he was second team, I think, all rookie. He kind of got knocked down a little bit there, and I think he was only on the list. He was 9th, so it wasn't even like he was like 6th and just barely missed out on being first team all rookie. No, I mean he barely made the second team. So I think he's got a lot to prove this season. But you know what? I'll tell you this from talking to a number of different people over the past 3 or 4 months who would really know about this. They all rave about Brandon Ingram's work ethic and his ability to improve and get better and just steadily grow, and just about how dedicated he is. And then at the same time, I heard the opposite things about one D'Angelo Russell, and that maybe he wasn't the most dedicated worker, and that there were some other issues going on there as far as his ability to be a leader and all those sorts of things. Doesn't mean he's going to be a bad player or anything like that. I'm still extremely high on D'Angelo Russell, but if the Lakers are putting all their eggs into the Ingram basket, from what I've heard behind the scenes, there's reason for that. So I am absolutely thrilled to see what Brandon Ingram has done with his game, and I hope he just comes out of the gate firing, kind of like Jaylen Brown did the other night, and just really puts on a show, because I think that would do so much to uplift the Lakers fan base. Of now you've got Lonzo Ball and you've got Brandon Ingram really going, and now you've got something maybe special that could be brewing if they're able to add some pieces. So yeah, I'm fired up about Summer League. I know you are too. Fortunately, our paths aren't going to quite cross because we're going to be there at different times. But man, it's going to be exciting to be out there and see this team play.
Absolutely. Hey, look, I grew up in Los Angeles, since 1979. All right. So I'm not accustomed to the Lakers being done in April every single year. This is new to me. So yeah, admittedly, I'm a little bit more excited about Summer League than I probably ever have been, and maybe than I probably should. But no, I I don't feel guilty about it. It like I said, it's time for them to to really turn things on and really get this organization going back in the right direction.
All right, Jabari. So last thing before we get you out of here, it came out today that the early over/under number for the Lakers for next season is set at 36.5.
Ooh.
For betting. I thought that was pretty interesting. If you had to place a bet, what side of that line would you fall on?
Well, it's funny because I actually had this discussion earlier. I put them somewhere in the range of 35 to 38. So I'm not saying I'm as smart as Vegas. So what I will say is I got lucky in this situation that they're right there, that they're right there in the middle. I honestly look. Best case scenario, I think this team could win as many as 38 games. Now, for some fans, that's not enough. They're like, oh man, that's still under 500. Listen, nobody just comes in and unless you have just a generational talent like a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or whoever else. I'm not even going to get in trouble by naming other names because people get sensitive. But unless you have to improve incrementally. And if they were to what did they end up with, like 29 wins last year?
Yeah, it was something like that, something in the mid to high 20s.
If they can, just like they did last year, if they can improve another 8 to 10 games, that's totally fine. That's perfectly fine. So yeah, I worst case scenario, I see them somewhere in the low 30s, but that would even obviously still be an improvement. I think they're going to settle somewhere in those mid to high 30s. Yeah,
I agree with that to an extent. I think I'm more on the side of the low 30s. That'd be my guess. Just because I think the West has, basically zero gimme games at this point. There's so many strong teams in the West now. The Sacramento Kings even got better. You've got all these teams that have been improving, and so I think that's going to make things really tough. And wins are going to be hard to come by. That's for sure. I think that East Coast swing is going to be a little bit more friendly than it used to be, considering how many players have left the East and headed west. So I'm more towards the low end of that 30 win mark, but who knows? We're a few months away from the season, so obviously all that can change. But yeah, I was a little bit surprised to see that number come out at 36.5. I thought it was going to be maybe a little bit lower than that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of bets taking the under on that one for this point.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked either. And like you said, we're still a couple months away from the start of the season. That move, that could move. Depending upon if they were able to add, a couple veteran pieces, or even sometimes depending upon how they, how good or bad they look, in the summer league. But no, like I said, top side, somewhere in the 30s, and probably bottom side somewhere in the 30s as well. And you know what, Lakers fans, as long as they show improvement, I said the same exact thing last year around this time. As long as they show improvement, that's really all that matters.
Yep. Yeah. Hey, create a fun winning culture. Show that you've got something going on here. Show that you've got a team that could turn into something, and then maybe you'll be able to catch the eye of some of these free agents next summer, like this guy named Paul George, who may or may not be already hellbent to wind up in Los Angeles. So, Jabari, I think we've covered pretty much everything here. We've covered quite a bit in a pretty short amount of time, which is always impressive. Do you have anything that you'd like to mention to the listeners out there? Anything that you'd like to plug before we call it a night?
You know what? If you guys do the Twitter thing, I'm at Jabari Davis NBA. Host Triple Threat Radio on KOL 750 with my good friends Jameson Wells and Jordan Buscarini. If you're on Twitter, you can catch that link there. Trevor, I really do. Like I said, I definitely always appreciate talking hoops with you.
Hey, always a pleasure having you come on. Definitely appreciate it. And we're going to have to do this again.
Just let me know.
All right. So that was Jabari Davis. Always a great conversation on Lakers basketball. That's going to wrap things up for us today. As always, you can find this show on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, the CLNS Media app, and of course, LakersNation.com. If you go to iTunes, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to this show. That's going to do it. I'm Trevor Lane, and this has been the Lakers Nation Podcast.